שנייה. דקה, אני במים. אוקיי. אתה יכול לחבר ל-TJC, לאן התחברת? לא, זה חבר ל-TJC. אתה רואה? וואו. מה זה עכשיו? לייב?
כן, זה עכשיו לייב. הנה זה בשבע, זהו, כאן יהיה בשמונה, ב10, ב1 בלילה.
אז הוא עובר אותנו היום.
מחר בבוקר.
איזה יופי.
כנראה.
בעזרת השם. בוא נתחבר לפה. אני צריך לבדוק אם יש איזה קומנט. טוב, איפה כן, שמתי את זה פה, את הפרזנטיישן של היום. שמתי את זה. אמרתי את זה פה. זה במסמכים. אני לא זוכר איפה שמתי את זה. נראה לי ששמתי את זה. שכחתי את זה למעלה. כן, שכחתי את זה ב-USB. לא העתקתי את זה. ספת חנאי. אמרת ל-TJC?
אבל כן, הנה השפעה, אז זה באיפוס ככה,
בדיליי, כן, כן, כן.
של איזה כמה, של חצי דקה.
הנה זה. אוקיי. כן, how to handle anger. אז רגע, אז אם יש איזה קומנט, אז אני אסתכל פה לראות אם יש איזה מישהו שואל שאלות. live streaming. אני לא רוצה תודה. הנה. אוקיי. There we go. איך עושים comments?
יש שם צ'אט, לא?
הנה.
זה live chat.
I can see the two of you. Oh, great. Okay, great. Okay. So, okay. Off you go. So today we're going to discuss this Moses getting angry, which didn't happen so many times, only three times in the course of his leadership, and we're going to see how it ended. So there's this story, this joke with this with the truck driver.
No.
This guy was a truck driver for many years. He used to drive his truck for 18 hours a day, the concrete mixer, and he was already quite overdoing it. He was overwhelmed with work, and he always planned his retirement, his pension. Finally, he's going to sell the truck and buy a nice car. And one of the days was particularly difficult for him. Let me close the door. One of the days was particularly difficult for him. Started the day 3 o'clock in the morning, and he drove until 8 o'clock in the evening, and he was very tired and very upset. And he got home in the evening, and in the parking place of his truck, there was a car that's taking his parking space. And as if to make the situation even more, it was a new Benz, a Mercedes. So he started saying, look at this guy. He thinks because he's got a Mercedes, he could park wherever he wants. He could block my parking. And you know what he decided to do? He went back, right? And he started a concrete mixer, and he gave the Benz a lesson. He said this parking place would remain. The parking would remain. And he was so upset and so angry, and he went up and he knocked at the door, and everybody's waiting for him, singing Hayom Yom Huledet, happy birthday, and his wife gives him the key to the new Mercedes, to the new Benz. So obviously there's a lot of things in life that makes us upset, makes us angry. And in our weekly portion, we discuss even how Moshe Rabbeinu got angry, and what his anger caused, and what we could learn from it. So this is talking about the last few months of Moses' leadership and also of his life. He was going to pass away. Mind you, this is the end of the book of Numbers, the end of Sefer Bamidbar, and next week we're starting the book of Deuteronomy, which is basically Dvarim, a repetition of everything that took place. Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating everything that transpired with the Jews throughout their time, until in the end of the book of Deuteronomy, when Moses passes away and the Jews are at the door, at the path, the doorway to enter the promised land, which when they enter in the book of Joshua, right, with Jericho, when they surrounded and the walls fell. So these are the few months that are the last few months for Moses' life, and he was designated with the last mission that God gave him, which is to send warriors to the nation of Midian and to take revenge. What happened was that the Midianites had a very interesting way to cope, to manage the Jews. They knew they couldn't fight them, so they did something else. They pulled a different trick on them. Let's look what Rashi says. First of all, look at the verse. Moses became angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands, the commander of hundreds, who had returned from the campaign of war. Moses said to them, Did you allow all the females to leave? They were the same ones who were involved with the children of Israel and Balaam's advice to betray the Lord over the incident of Peor, resulting in a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Look at what she says on Balaam's advice. He said to them, even if you assemble, that's Balaam. Balaam, you remember the sorcerer who tried to swear at the Jews, who tried to curse at them, and all of his cursing turned to blessing. So before he went home, he told Balak, I can't beat them neither by war, by sword, even by cursing or spiritually. I can't beat them. There's only one way I could beat them. I could defeat them. And he gave him the following advice. He said to them, Balaam said to them, even if you assemble all the multitudes of the world, you will not be able to overcome them. Are you more numerous than the Egyptians who had 600 chosen chariots? Come and I will advise you. Their God hates immorality. Thus, entice them to sin with your women. As appears in the chapter of Chelek, right, in Sanhedrin, and in the Sifri. They were the same ones, Rashi says. This shows that they recognized them, saying, this is the one who led so-and-so to astray. So, what happened is, Balaam was giving an advice, and he said, the only way you could defeat the Jews, if you seduce them. If you send women to seduce them, and these women were to basically temptate them into following them, and then these women would also bring them content that is idol worshipping and so on. The story is that the women would make them go after, and then the woman would say, if you want me, then bow down to the statue, or do this and do that, and then the people started following this. Right. So Moses was requested by God to go to send people to Midian and to take care of the trouble. And the people went and they fought with the Midianites, and then they took capture of the women and they brought them, right? It was accustomed in those days when there was a war that only the men were fighting, the women were left at the camp, and after they defeat the men, they defeat the warriors. So they went to Midian's camp and they could loot whatever they want. It was a common rule that was not only, it was practiced by everyone. You could, once you win the war, you could loot. You could take whatever you want. And they saw these women who apparently were very beautiful, very attractive. And they brought some of them over together with whatever they took. So Moses became very angry. He said, why did you bring, this is the reason why this whole story happened, because they made their women seduce us. So you're coming back, you're bringing the women with you. You know, is this something that it's out of place, right? But still, although they acted in a way that wasn't proper, but Moses did not have to become angry. And soon we'll see what happens, because Moses became angry, and what resulted with that. So besides being angry, just as a general note, is punishing yourself over someone else's stupidity, right? Someone else. It's yeah, right. So Midian. What is Midian? Midian is Madonu Meriva. It's war. It's dispute, argument, controversy. That's the name Midian. Midian had no reason to hate the Jews. Everybody had, all the time there's reasons. There's always reasons. So obviously, when you peel the layers, you see there's no reason whatsoever. But there's always in a generation, because they're this, because they're that, because they're Republicans, and then because they're Democrats, and then they're pro and anti, and it doesn't matter what. There's always a reason for that. But Midian had no reason to fight the Jews. We had no interaction with them. We had no relationship with them. And, usually a conflict arouses either for territorial background, right? Fighting over a country, my country, your country, or sometimes we find when the Jews went through on their journey to Israel, they had to pass through different countries. Some countries said, we're not letting you in. Some countries said, okay, but you have to do, right? So we find that in the previous few portions, we find about Israel's journey towards, the Jews' journey towards Israel, and they had to pass through different countries. But Midian, they were not on the way. They were not on the route of the Jews. There was not an interaction with them. There was no religious conflict because there was nothing to do one with the other. Just like, say, Israel would have a war with Kyrgyzstan. And they're like, well, what? They don't know where it is even. I don't think Kyrgyzstan knows about Israel. Israelis maybe know about Kyrgyzstan. But what is there to fight about? We're not close to each other. We don't share anything, right? But Midian wanted the war. They wanted a war. And Midian was one of the first seeds of anti-Semitism, of hatred to the Jews with no reasons, right? And that's why Hashem said, "Nekom nikumat Hashem et Midianim velo me'et Moavim." שהמואבים נכנסו מחמת יראה, אבל מדיינים יתעברו על ריב לא להם. So the Moavim, the Moabites, they went to war because the Jews went next to their country, and they thought maybe they're going in, they'll occupy, conquer. But Midian, they were not in the war. They just hated the Jews. That's what they did. All they did was because they hated the Jews. So they had to get a special treatment, right? Nikom nikumat Hashem Midian. Moses said, understanding who Midian is, he said, Milchemet Hashem b'Midian. This is the war of God in Midian. This is not our war. Again, if there's a certain controversy, there's a certain challenge between us, you don't like this, I don't like that, there's a conflict that we could find reasons for that. But hating us for no reason, without any interaction, without any background, without any history together, so Moses said, Nikumat Hashem, this is the revenge of Hashem. This is the revenge of God, because we are not to do. And this was over the sin that they brought their women. Look how much they were willing to go in order to destroy us. They realized wars won't work, and they realized all the other army tricks. So they came out with this trick of seducing the Jews over their attractive women. So Moses, because being angry, was mistaken. What was his mistake? Let's look at what the mistake says. After they come back, he says to them, he gets upset. Why did you bring these women with you? That's the whole reason why we went on this war altogether, right? So Elazar, the high priest, turns to the people. He says, Elazar the Kohen said to the soldiers returning from the battle, this is the statute that the Lord commanded Moses. And he told them that the story was like this. They brought with them, besides the women, they brought with them also a lot of belongings they took from the camp of Midian, which was perfectly legitimate in those days, right? You go out to a war, you win your enemy, you could loot, you could take whatever, right? The prizes, right? It's a part of the deal. Maybe that's why they drafted the army. But I don't know. Nowadays, it's not possible. You get drafted, you can't enjoy from. But anyways, it's a part of the deal. They went in and they took whatever they took from them. Moses said that all the utensils they brought from the non-Jews, they had to be immersed in water to purify them. But he forgot something else. There was two elements. There's one purifying them, but there's one kosherizing them. The same utensils that were used for cooking, for baking, for things that are not kosher, naturally Midian were not kosher. Besides purifying them, they also had to kosherize them, right? If there's something made out of metal, you have to put it in water. Either you burn it by fire, depends on how you use it, a pot, a pan, right? Different skewers were kosher differently. So all the things that they brought with them, they had to kosherize. But Moses, as if forgot about this. Forgot about kosherizing. He's only told them about purifying. So Elazar stepped in and said, hold it. You have to kosherize. It says Moses came. Here's what Rashi says. Elazar the Kohen says Moses came to a state of anger. He came to err. For the laws of purging Gentile vessels eluded him. A similar incident happened on the 8th day of the what is it? Investitures of the Kohanim, as it says Moses, became angry with Elazar and Itamar. He came to a state of anger, so he came to err. Similarly, in the episode of Now Listen You Rebels, and struck the rock, Moshe Kabasela, through anger he came to err. So Rashi brings 3 places where Moshe Rabbeinu got angry. And in all of these places, because of his anger, because of being upset, he actually made a mistake. And the question we have, right, first of all, let's elaborate a little bit about these cases. The first case was on the first day of the month of Nisan. This is the inauguration of the temple. They were building the temple. Everyone were excited. God said, build for me a temple. I will dwell in you. I will make it a place that you will come to that place, to that physical location, that you could connect with the spiritual. It was obviously very exciting. And what happened on the very same day, Nadav and Avihu, the 2 children of Aaron, were so possessed with their love to godliness that their soul departed from their body. They did something wrong. It's an argument. We spoke about it. I think when we spoke, either they were drunk or they just went a little too much with their desire to be included in godliness. But the end of the story is they died. And now they died. So Aaron, their father, and the 2 other priests, which Aaron's son, the 2 brothers, are considered onanim. Onanim is someone who just lost a family relative, right? And someone who is onen. Onen, it means the stage from the passing until the burial. Between the passing and the burial, the person is considered onen, right? Which is completely exempted from any other mitzvah but to bury the dead. We have a mitzvah in Judaism that we bury as soon as possible. We don't delay, right? We don't have other religions, other cultures, they wait and they do a ceremony. By us, it's as soon as possible. So, but for the duration that goes between the passing and the burial, this is called onanim. So mind you, this is the celebration that they all waited for, inauguration of the temple. Everyone came for it, right? And all of a sudden, these 2 guys are dead. What are we doing now? The performer of this main event, which is the high priest, right? He cannot do anything, right? And also the 2 other priests, right? The brothers. So they refrained from eating the offering. There was an offering for Rosh Chodesh, for the new moon, and they refrained from eating. Moses got upset with them. He got angry. And he said, you have to eat because God ordered me to continue the day as usual. Indeed, there was an order from above. God said, although normally in a state of mourning, of fasting, we push everything aside, but since today is a special day, please convey to the priest that everything would be fulfilled as planned, right? So Moses says, why don't you eat the offerings? You're supposed to continue as planned. And Aaron replied to Moses, and he said, indeed, the festival offerings we are taking care of. This is, so to speak, like a standard offering. Every new moon you have it, right? So this is not included in the special order that was given from above. In other words, I know exactly what you mean, but please look into the details and you'll see what we all gathered here for, the festivity. Yes, we will continue as planned. But what the other stuff, the normal procedure, that gets pushed aside. No one has to notice, no one has to know about it. And therefore, right, Aaron said, and Moses, Vayishma Moshe Vayitav Mena. Moses heard and said, you are correct. Okay? So we see Moses get angry at them, right? And they recognize his mistake. But because of his anger, he came to do a mistake, right? The second case, of course, that's the most outspoken one. Everybody knows of it. Moses hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock. This was after the passing of Miriam, his sister. And Miriam had a well. This was one of the miracles that the Jews had while they were wandering in the desert. Besides the bread from heaven, the manna, they also had a well going with them. Would you imagine a hole in the ground to get the water that actually follows them on the route? When Miriam passed away, the well disappeared. Because it was in her merit. It was in her merit that the well was there. When Miriam passed away, the well disappeared, and everybody got upset. No water, right? This is a desert. Mind you, 40 years in a desert, the only thing you need the most is water, right? They got bread from heaven, they got everything they want. Give us some water, right? And they say, and instead of asking nicely, of course, they started a whole conflict, and they started this whole thing where, oh, we should have stayed in Egypt, and because we're now in the desert, there's no water, and we'll die, and we'll dry out. Instead of asking, they kvetch. What's it, kvetch? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shimuna Amorim. Stop with that. Listen, you rebels. Enough. So he got upset. Right? He got upset, and what happened is that instead of speaking to the rock, he hit the rock, and then the worst decree that he had to die in the desert and not enter the land of Israel. These two cases followed by this last case where he got angry. This is, of course, the last time he got angry. It's the last time he was involved in any operation, because that was several months before his passing, right? So the Rebbe explains, why is this explained here? Why in those places, both in the tabernacle and in the rock, it doesn't mention, Rashi doesn't bring that Moses got upset and therefore he was mistaken, right? Here, this is Moses being angry over Lazai Taman Harin in the offering, anger over the people, right? That were rebels, right? And anger over the warriors that brought the women with them. But why wasn't it brought there? So look what the Rebbe says. The reason Rashi did not bring up his interpretation of Moses being angry and therefore mistaking is in those places is, right? It doesn't mention anything there. Only when we get to the third time, Rashi elaborates, you should know he was also upset there, and because of that, the mistake. On Parsha Shmini, there could have been a halachic argument between Moses and Aaron, and this might not be considered error, right? He could have had that Moses was holding this way, Aaron was holding that way, and there was just an argument. It wasn't necessarily an error, right? There's no right or wrong, as you say, right? And on Parsha Chukat, right, this is the hitting the rock, one might say that after speaking to the different rock and not getting water to come out, Moses thought perhaps he should hit it. So there's one of the interpretations that speaks about it. God first told him in a different case to hit a rock and water will come out, right? It's a verse. Moses was instructed by God, and when he spoke to the rock, he didn't speak to the right rock. Mind you, he was talking to a stone, and the stone didn't come out with water. And he said, "Oh no, it's a different stone." Would you imagine? It's a stone. Okay, this stone comes water. That stone comes. It's all a miracle either way. But so we don't necessarily connect his anger with the mistake. On the first case, there's, as you said, no right or wrong. It's just different opinions. And on the second case, there was a precedent for it, because God told them to hit one rock. It wasn't that rock, and then, whereas here, by forgetting the laws of purging vessels, we must say there has been anger, thus resulting in error. Rashi has there's no way around it. In the other cases, Rashi was not very eager to say, Moses was angry and therefore he made a mistake. It's not so nice to say, and Rashi had different reasons not to say it, right? Maybe there wasn't a mistake. But in our case, Moses completely forgetting about this whole kosherizing the vessels, that didn't sound right. So that's why he brings it here, where we don't have any other way of solving it, of resolving the issue. Right? So here's what Tractate Avot says about, right, first, our question now is, what about this anger? How could Moses get upset? And when he gets upset, he makes mistakes. And are there cases where anger is productive? Is it justified, productive? Is it good or not at all? Okay, so here's what Tractate Avot says. There are 4 types of temperaments. One who is easily angered and easily appeased. Right? Kal lichos v'kal leratzot. His virtue cancels his flaws. אם קל לכעוס קל לרצות, נכון שהוא כועס בקלות, אבל הוא גם מתרצה בקלות. אז יצא הפסדו בשכרו. השכר שלו יותר גדול. His reward, his virtue, overcomes his disadvantage that he gets upset. One who is difficult to anger, but is difficult to appease. His flaw cancels his virtue. So it's difficult to get him angry, but when he gets angry, that's... So on one hand, right, but when one time he gets angry, his flaw covers all his virtues, right? That you can't get around it. And another third type, one who is difficult to anger and is easily appeased, is a chassid. It's difficult to get him angry, but when he gets angry, it's easy to appease him. And one that's easily angered, and when it's so easy to anger him, when he gets angry, he also stays angry, right? It's difficult. That's considered the wicked. That's Rasha. So from this Mishnah in Avot, it's a famous Mishnah. From here we see that the Chassid is difficult to anger, but it's not impossible to anger. So there's actually room.
Like everyone can be angry.
Everyone could be angry, and soon we'll see that sometimes you should be angry, or to be more precise, you should look like you're angry. Okay, we'll soon see it in a second. But just by the Mishnah, if the Mishnah is about to tell you who is the tzaddik, who is the righteous, the pious, the perfect person, this is your role model, someone you have to imitate, to be like. So the Mishnah would say someone who never gets angry. So one would say maybe that's impossible. Someone who never gets angry. Okay, maybe that's why not the Mishnah never said it, because it's impossible. But even if say someone, but the Mishnah says someone who is difficult to make him angry. It's possible to make him angry, but it's very difficult. Mind you, Moses leading the people for all these years, right? How many years he was the leader, right? For, I don't know, 70 years, or how many years he was, even more, right? He was 30 when he was, it was like 90 years he was, and 3 times in his life. Oh yeah, that for the record, it's actually very good, right? Very good. But the Mishnah says it's difficult to anger. That means that there is room for anger. And let's look at what the Rambam says. Maimonides says as follows. This is in the laws of the Ot. Laws of the Ot. The straight path, Aderech HaYeshara. This involves discovering the midpoint temperament of each and every trait that man possesses within his personality. This refers to the trait which is equidistant from either of the extremes, right? It's as far as, without being close to either of them. For example, he should not be wrathful, easily angered, nor be like the dead, without feeling. Rather, he should adopt an intermediate course, which means he should display anger only when the matter is serious enough to warrant it, in order to prevent the matter from recurring. So Rambam says, you have to find balance. If somebody has questions, by the way, you could send them here. Let me write. If someone has questions. Do you see מה אתה רואה את התגובות שכותבים שם ביוטיוב? אוקיי, לא נורא. כן, אני מנסה עכשיו לראות. Okay. So Rambam says, go straight, be in the middle, the path, the golden path, right? As far from both. Don't get too extreme. Don't get too, even with anger. Don't be like someone who doesn't have feeling. When something triggers being angry, yes, you need to be, in order to make sure this is not recurring, right? Because somebody identifies weakness at the other party, they'll just take advantage of it and they'll do it over and over again. It's not going to stop on its own. You have to put a stop to it. You need to have red lines and you need to say, no more, right? No more. So, Rambam says, but let's look at what Rambam says a little more deeply, right? And he says, it's all about pretending like. There are temperaments with regards to which a man is forbidden to follow the middle path. There are he's going to bring 2 examples where a person should not stick to the middle, but rather go to the extreme. He should move away from one extreme and adopt the other. One of them, the first one is pride, gava, arrogance, right? A person should go to the extreme of being the opposite of arrogant, humble as possible, modest as possible. And the second one is anger. Anger is also an exceptionally bad quality. It is fitting and proper that one move away from it and adopt the opposite extreme. He should school himself not to become angry even when it is fitting to be angry. If he should wish to arouse fear in his children and household or within the community, if he is a communal leader and wishes to be angry at them to motivate them to return to proper path, he should present an angry front to them to punish them, but he should not be he should be inwardly calm. He should be like one who acts out the part of the angry man in his wrath, but is not himself angry. So Rambam says, never get angry, never get upset. What happens if you need to show, you have authority, you need to pretend like you're angry? Inside, you have to be calm as before. Just pretend like you're angry. So one is allowed to pretend like they're upset, but at the same time has to remain calm. And this the border between being angry in order to educate and being angry in a counterproductive way is very thin, right?
Right.
That's why you have to stress about staying calm inside. Because if you don't stay calm inside, you don't get as upset. Say you get a little upset and you make it into a whole scene. But if you get even a little upset, it'll be very easy to cross the border and really get upset, right? Really get upset over, certain cases that would require response, but not a response that would, that would be counterproductive, just being upset. So apparently anger is okay as long as it doesn't carry you away and as long as you know that it's just a show, it's just to pretend, right? And now we're going to a different discussion about anger, about where to point the anger. Who's at fault, right? Who's at fault? Right? There's different things happen to people. I was hit by a car. I had a scooter accident several years ago, and obviously I'm okay, but I was hurt, and I didn't know what's going on. Right? Is this a message from above? Does this mean that I shouldn't drive a scooter any longer? Which I've ever since never driven a scooter and probably will never go on a scooter ever in my life, God willing. So yeah, there's a message from above. But is the other person liable for hitting me? Is it my fault? Is it his fault? What's going on, right? So in fact, before getting angry, we need to find the address. We need to know who to point the anger to, right? Is the person who's doing me that damage at fault? Or should I have it all brought to God's door, saying, God, you brought this whole scenario to unveiling, so it's your fault, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, if you say the person is at fault, which is given, we'll look into it now a little bit deeper, given the free choice of the other person, that's one aspect. Another aspect is, say, it's like somebody hitting you with a stick. You don't get upset at the stick, right? It's a stick. Right. So God is using different people to do different things. They're like a tool, right? You can't get upset at the stick. You have to get upset at the person hitting the stick, holding the stick, right? So there's a big discussion between the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, right, and the Sefer HaChinuch, which is also the Alter Rebbe's opinion, right? So Sefer HaChinuch, let's look what the Sefer HaChinuch writes. Hold on, let me get a tissue. Where's my tissue? I need a piece of tissue. Hold on. Was written, we don't know by whom. It's an interpretation of all the mitzvot, expounds all the mitzvot. We don't know. The author name was never mentioned.
But the book, this name was given to the book, or that's what it was called?
No, he called it Sefer HaChinuch, but I think he wrote in his name in like an acronym or something. I didn't know who it was.
And from which century?
I think 600-700 years ago. I don't remember. I could look. Anyway. And he says like this, Mishorshei mitzvah. He says that we have many mitzvot that are telling us we need to remember things. We need to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, remember, right? All these things. We need to remember God, right? We need to. So Mishorshei mitzvah. He says like this, from the roots of the commandment, that a person know and put into his heart that everything that happens to him, good and bad, the cause of it coming to him is from God. Blessed be He. Hence, when a person caused him pain or hurt him, he should know for himself that his own sins caused it, and that God may be blessed ordained this for him. And he should not place his thoughts to taking vengeance from the one who pained him, since he is not the cause of his evil, but rather the sin is the cause. Like David, peace be upon him, stated, leave him to curse, since the Lord told him so. Sefer HaChinuch says that the person who is doing something bad to us is not at fault, because everything comes from God. and he brings an evidence from King David. What happened with King David? King David had to run away from Jerusalem when his son conducted a rebellion against him. Avshalom, right? Avshalom did a whole thing against him. And while he was running away from Yerushalayim, it was obviously a very low point for King David. His own son chases him, and he's kicking him out of his own kingdom, right, of his own city. And then came out Shimei ben Gera, an individual, and cursed him. Curse him at David. Cursed at David, yeah. The small group of people that were loyal to David, who was still officially the king, right? You can't go out and you can't speak to the king if he doesn't, he doesn't tell you, if he doesn't turn to you, let alone. So the small group of people wanted to get at him. What do you mean? How can you go and curse like this, right? But King David stopped them, and he said, "Anichu ki Hashem amar lo kalel." Leave him to curse, since the Lord told him so. The Lord told him so. When did the Lord appear to this individual who wasn't apparently such a great guy? Right. He didn't have such an interaction with God, telling him, "You go out when David comes out and tell him this and that." But King David understood this is another phase of his refinement over the sin of Bathsheba, over what he did through the Bathsheba, right, and so on. So he says this is another phase. This is Masatikun. This is the journey I have to take, where I get refined. And another phase is I'll be humiliated in such a way. So he said, leave him. Don't do anything, because it's not him. It's God telling him to do it. So this is the position of Sefer HaChinuch. It says, whatever happens to you, someone does something wrong to you, you don't look at the person that caused you the damage. You only look your eyes to God and say, God, why is it happening? You're the only address, right? The person doing it is just like a tool in the hands of God, right? The Alter Rebbe brings this approach and elaborates it in Igeret HaKodesh. And he says like this: we shall proceed with the saying of our sages of blessed memory. Whoever is in a rage is as if he worship idols. The reason is clear to those that have understanding, because at the time of his anger, faith had departed from him. For were he to believe that what happened to him is of the Lord's doing, he would not become angry at all. And though it is a person possessed of free choice cursing him, or hitting him, or causing damage to his money, right? You don't say it's a stick coming from above, a stone falling from above, and you say, oh, okay, God, you hit me with a stone, right? You could see an individual which you have interaction with, who comes with the stick to come to hit you, right? And that person seemingly has free choice over doing that, right? Of hitting him or cursing or making damage, right? And therefore guilty according to the laws of man and the laws of heaven for having chosen evil. If you take that person to court and you say, this person hit me, he can't just say, oh, God told me to hit you. It doesn't work like you hit someone, you have to pay, right? He's guilty according to our laws, God laws, of course. Nevertheless, as regards the person harmed, this was already decreed from heaven, and the omnipresent has many deputies. So a person should have that in mind. Whenever something negative happens to me, this was already decreed from above. Through who it will come, that's a different question. But the person that causes the damage is not to blame. Because this was something that was, if it wasn't through this person, it would be through that person. If it wasn't on this day, it would have been on that day. But this was already decreed from above. This was already predestined. So that's the Sefer HaChinuch, and that's what the Alter Rebbe. So, if you take that position, the anger is completely missing the point, right? The anger is, what is there to be upset now over this person? You don't get angry at a stick, right? Being angry not only is counterproductive, it's missing the point. You don't know what's going on, right? Something negative happens to me. Right, something I should be concentrated in understanding why it happened. Maybe I need to change my ways. I need to correct my ways. Maybe I've been involved in something that's not positive. Maybe it's a message from above, obviously. So being angry is missing the point. Is basically, instead of analyzing the message that God is delivering to me in a very creative way, one might say, right? But getting the message, it's missing the whole point. If a person decides that because, thank you. The person decides that over this, wrong incident, bad incident, they would take a good resolution to improve in a certain way. That's productive. That's really getting the message over this, right? But just getting upset at someone, no sense. Now this is one way of looking at things. Now there's another way, the way of Or HaChaim. Or HaChaim says, not long ago was his passing day. Or HaChaim says that a person gets complete free choice over what he does. And therefore he could also hurt someone who was not decreed to be hurt. And let's look at a very scary story. First we'll look at what his evidence is with Shem, right? This with Shem, with the brothers and Joseph. Okay. This is the brothers and Joseph. You remember Joseph was giving them all the dreams and they got upset. And he went to Shechem where they were there. And they decided this is the time, this is the day. Let's finish with it, right? And Reuven, the older brother, the more responsible, said, no, you shouldn't kill him. Reuven heard and he saved him from their hands. And he said, let us not deal him a deadly blow. And Reuven said to them, do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is in the desert, but do not lay a hand upon him, in order to save him from their hands to return him to his father. Reuven said, now you're upset, now you're angry. You have to point your anger at someone. Take the boy, put him in the pit. And then once you get relaxed, I'll go to the pit, I'll bring him out. Now, the pit was not empty. The pit was filled with scorpions and snakes. So Reuven says, don't kill him. Throw him to a pit, to a dungeon, filled with scorpions and snakes. And then what? Scorpions and snakes will kiss him? Scorpions and snakes, that's what they do, right? They kill. So what does it matter if you kill him this way or kill him the other way? But the Or HaChaim explains a very interesting thought. Why did he send him to the pit and not kill him? Or HaChaim says like this. He saved them from harm at their hands, right? This action was applauded by the Torah as man is a free creature possessing freedom of choice and able to kill people who are not guilty or have not been convicted, as distinct from wild beasts which should not kill humans unless the latter are guilty of death in the eyes of God. The words "Vayatzileu miyadam," he rescued them from their hands, mean that he saved them from the evil consequences of carrying out their freedom of choice to kill. By doing what he did, Reuben nullified the brother's statement. We shall see what happens to his dreams. Reuben says, we can make mistakes. We could kill someone who doesn't deserve to be killed. But scorpions and snakes, they're messengers of God completely. They don't have, trust me, when a snake doesn't say, I'll bite this guy, I'll bite that guy, we probably all taste the same for him, right? But when a snake or scorpion bites, that's evidently from above. But a person has free choice to hit someone who doesn't deserve to get hit. You notice it's contradicting to what we said earlier, where the person decreed from above, and then the person who does it, the messenger, is just a messenger, but if it's not through this guy, it will be through that guy, right? But according to Or HaChaim, yes, there is free choice. Yes, we could actually deviate from what we need to do. And yes, we could sometimes cause damage to someone who doesn't deserve. According to what we said earlier, no such thing. If a person has damage caused to them, that's because they deserve it. But according to this approach, Reuben says, we'll throw him to the pit. The pit was filled with scorpions and snakes. If he doesn't deserve dying, they will not do anything to him, which obviously happened. They didn't do anything to him. Only later, the brothers took him from the pit and sold him as a slave. Yeah. The Holocaust triggers a different look. We should have, speaking of the Holocaust or other travesties that our nation had suffered, we should have always the question. We shouldn't have answers. Because once you have answers, you justify it. Right. Even if you have good answers, bad answers, once you have an answer to it, it actually says, oh, now I understand. Now it's not that bad. But Holocaust was so bad. The question has to be constantly asked. but answers should not be proposed, because first, there's no answer. Right? There's no explanation in the world how 6 million people, which the vast majority of them, if not all of them, were innocent.
Yeah.
Right? There were righteous people, there were people who observed all the Torah, and there were people who didn't observe any of the Torah. But to be killed in such a cruel and vicious way, with such a systematic approach, there's not a sin in the world, even if all the Jews will commit all the sins all the time, it will never justify such outcome. So we should stay with the question. We should remain with the question. We shouldn't have any answers to it. But this is speaking on a much smaller scale, right? Let's look at another kind of scary story, right? The story that's brought. Here, this is what the Rebbe says with Or HaChaim, right? With regards to what Or HaChaim brings, this could be alluded to someone going to a dangerous place. And although it is always dependent from above, but this individual could be punished even for a small sin. This is why the danger is more actual with regards to human being of free choice than with animals, since normally God promised they will fear us. So even a small merit is sufficient to be spared from them. So with regards to the difference between human beings and animals, yes, animals are, the animals are afraid of us. Right? They're animals. But for the people, they could actually go off the route and do things that are not supposed to do. But that's not the example. This is the example of Miriam. The Gemara brings a very interesting and quite scary story. And let's read it from the Gemara. Chagiga 4b. When Rabbi Yosef reached the verse, he cried, but there are those who swept away without justice. קוראים לזה, יש בלא משפט, יש מתים בלא משפט, שכחתי. There are those who swept away without justice. He said, is there one who goes before his time and dies for no reason? The Gemara answers, yes. Like this incident of Rav Bivai Bar Abaye, who would be frequented by the company of the angel of death. He was having discussions with the angel of death. Would you imagine, right? And you would see how people died at the hands of the angel. The angel of death said to his angel, so he was sitting with the angel of death. I'm not sure what the setting was and if they had yummy cakes like we have, but they were sitting together, and the aide of the angel of death approaches, and the angel says, go and bring me, which means, what is bring? Kill. Miriam, the razor, which is the braider, the hairdresser of women's hair. He went, but instead brought in Miriam, the razor of babies, kindergarten teacher. The angel of death said to him, I told you to bring Miriam, the razor of women's hair. I said Miriam, the hairdresser. What are you doing? This is not Miriam, the hairdresser. That's Miriam, the kindergarten teacher. His agent said to him, if so, return her to life. Okay, you guys this is your job. You do it. This is your day job, right? Bring people, get people. It's like return back to the shelf, right? Like go to the store, you bring a refund, right? They put it back. They fold the shirt and they put return her to life. He said to him, since you have already brought her, let her be counted toward the number of deceased people. She's already dead. She's dead. Apparently, this woman died unintentionally. Rabbi Vai was present all the time, right? Seeing this interaction between the angel of death and his aide as the agent. But as her time to die had not yet arrived, how were you able to kill her? Right? Everybody has days. They're supposed to, right? Everything is scheduled. Right. How did you kill someone who's not supposed to die? The agent responded that he had the opportunity as she was holding a shovel in her hand, and with it she was lighting and sweeping the oven. She took the fire and set it on her foot, right? By mistake. She was scalded and her luck suffered, which gave me the opportunity and I brought her. Itra mazale, ככה הגמרא כותבת. לא, המזל שלה היה רע באותו רגע. She had bad luck, right? So she took something out of the oven and the fire hit her foot, and because her luck was bad or negative at that time, so she could die, right? This is a very scary story, right? So he was telling him about Miriam, the hairdresser, and he went to bring Miriam, the kindergarten teacher. They were both killing Miriam, right? So this brings us to conclusion that indeed someone could get hurt even without they deserve it. We said earlier, if somebody gets something, that's because they deserve it. There's no reason to get upset at someone who hit you, because if I was hit, that means I deserve it. From these cases, right, Reuben saying we're not hitting him because we might hit someone who doesn't deserve to die, whereas the snakes and scorpions will never. And this story, right, the angel of death, Malach HaMavet, go bring someone who's not supposed to die because that moment was a negative moment for her. We can see that indeed, right? This is something that, that's what the Rebbe brings, that if a person does something and goes to a place of danger, so even a small thing could actually cause him, could cause him damage, right? So according to what the Alter Rebbe says, we know that a person is a messenger of God. And even according to this explanation, that's what the Rebbe brings. I should have put it earlier here. With regards to what the Or HaChaim brings, this could be alluded to someone going to a dangerous place, that although it is always dependent from above, but this individual could be punished even for a small sin. Okay? So if you go to a place that is dangerous, so even a small sin could actually make a person getting, punishment, right? That normally would not trigger such a punishment, right? So this is why the danger is more actual with regards to human beings than with animals, because normally God promised they would fear us, so even a small matter is sufficient to be spared from them. So this is about the anger and how it's supposed to be treated, that we shouldn't refer to the other person as the one who caused us the damage, but we should refer to God and see how we can correct our ways and get the message all right. Now, what is really how to overcome anger, right? This is in theory. In theory, when someone goes through a very difficult moment, they shouldn't get upset. They rather should understand that this is all from above, and they should look into themselves and see what needs to be corrected. But at the time of being angry, what is there to do? How could you get away of it? How do you get away from it? So there's several advice, right? The first advice is time. Give it time. There's a book called Sefer Hasidim, an ancient book, and he tells a story. It's a story of that tells you how much time is necessary, and he says that there was an individual who had a son, right? There was a son who honored his father very much. He honored his father. He loved his father. And before the father passed away, he called his son, who he truly loved. They both loved each other very much. And he told him, there's only one thing I want to command you. I want to tell you. Don't get upset at someone before waiting one night. In other words, always wait, sleep on it. Tishana Zelayla. You have to wait for one night. Yeah. So the story goes on that this son became a very successful businessman and had to leave the house quite often, quite frequent. So he had children, and one time he went on a journey, and the journey, it got a little complicated. Anyway, he got into a place. He was there for instead of several weeks or several months, he had to stay for several years. So he had to stay for several years. And finally, he managed to get over this situation that he was in, and he went back home. And he got to his city, to his town, to his village, and he approached his house. And as he approaches the door, as he's about to knock the door, he hears a sound of a young man speaking to his wife. He was shocked. He thought, my wife wasn't loyal to me, right? There's another man in my house. And he pulled out his sword, right? He was going to go in and kill them both. But he remembered that he promised his father before he passed away that even if you get very angry, you have to wait at night. Yeah. So he turned around and he went from the house. He didn't go in, right? He said, this is too much. And in the morning he came. And in the morning when he came, he realized this young man is actually his son, who grew to be a young man, that he wasn't there. He wasn't there for several years. And the little boy that he left became the man. And then he realized how, right, thank God that my father, right, told me, right, taught me that I should wait. So first cure is time. Give it time. You get upset at something, wait. Don't respond instantly, right? You get an email somebody sends you that is really annoying, wait. You could draft, but don't click the send button. Somebody said don't draft because you might by mistake click send. Don't click the send button. Don't draft, right? So the first advice is time, right? The same time, but a person is upset, it's like a burning flame, right? So you have to count to 100, or you need to, right? They were saying about one of these righteous people that had a coat that he called it Me'ila Kas, the coat of anger. That whenever something went out that he had to be angry over, he requested to be that the coat would be brought. But the problem is the coat was stored in a case, in a box, in a cabinet, and right by the time they got it out, it's okay. He actually never wore this coat, right? The second thing is speech. What happens is when we get upset, if we speak about it, it makes us even more upset, right? The speech arouses the anger, doesn't let it relax. When somebody gets upset, when we get upset, we need to be quiet, right? We need to wait, and we also don't need to elaborate, because the more I say to others or to myself, that makes me even more angry. When bringing it out in speech, right? Right, it reinforces the anger. So don't speak about the thing that happened, right? Because that reinforces it, that brings it again. It's like the anger is like fire. The fire needs material to burn, right? So you don't do it. Another advice is asking forgiveness, right? When we get upset, we need to know about asking forgiveness. This is a letter that the Rebbe writes to someone. No. This is a letter that the Rebbe writes to someone that this lady who had troubles, she had issues controlling her anger. Where's that letter? Didn't I translate the letter? I translated the letter. Oh, I forgot to copy it. Yeah, I did translate it on the other computer. Anyway, the letter goes like this. She says to him that she gets angry all the time. So the Rebbe says, look at what Shulchan Aruch says. The Shulchan Aruch says that if somebody hurts someone, they need to ask for forgiveness. Now, since asking for forgiveness is a very difficult thing to young children and also to adults. Sometimes to adults it's even more difficult than to children. Now, but you have to do it. It's a part of the rule, right? You make somebody upset, you ask for their forgiveness. You make mistakes, you need to ask forgiveness for them. Please go upstairs. Thank you. Right? So, the Rebbe says like this. Every time you're about to get angry, so remember that in order to maintain the relationship or in order to get somewhere, you're going to have to face that person again and say you're sorry. Now, since you know it's very difficult for you to say I'm sorry, like it is difficult to every individual, right? So because you want to refrain from it, so you rather not be angry to begin with. So remind yourself. First, give it time. Second, don't bring it in speech. Don't speak about it. Don't be elaborative about it. And also remind yourself that if you're hitting someone, you're going to have to say sorry. Yeah. And since it's difficult to say sorry, just remember that moment, right? And then just this would help, right? This is another tip, another advice. We'll end with the story, the story about the Baal Shem Tov. It's a long story. It was just, my kids were just telling the story on Motzei Shabbat, right after Shabbat. We're telling a story. After Shabbat, it's a minhag, it's a custom to say stories of the Baal Shem Tov. So I say stories of everyone at Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov says a story that he was sitting with his disciples and he was all focused himself. He wasn't speaking. He was like in a different world. And they were trying to encourage him. They were singing some songs. They wanted to hear some Torah from him. Nothing here. It was like he wasn't here. And then all of a sudden, a simple person walks into the room. And as he walks into the room, the Baal Shem Tov raises his head and turns to this person, this individual who was apparently a very simple man. And he says, come sit next to me. And he comes sit next to him, and the Baal Shem Tov gives him a plate and makes sure he gets to food, he gets to eat, and he sits with him. And then after he's eating a little bit, the Baal Shem Tov approaches him and whispers something in his ear. He whispers something in his ear, and the person gets up and leaves. And as the person left, the Baal Shem Tov was in such a great mood. He was aroused, he was happy, he was elaborate, he was talking, he was singing, and nobody knew what was this. Was this Elijah the prophet, or who was this guy, right? So the Baal Shem Tov realized that they were surprised and what's going on. So he told them, let me tell you something about this individual, about this person. This person is a simple guy. It's a simple guy. And he went through a very interesting trial. And he says as follows. This individual is a poor man. He doesn't have much money. He's trying to work here, work there, but he's never been too successful in getting money. He has a family, a wife, children he has to take care of. And last year, in the holiday of Sukkot, he saw the rich people or the more respected people have a etrog, have a citron and a etrog. And he decided he also wants an etrog. But of course, he doesn't have. So he decided he's going to do under his bed a little box, a designated box. It took a bag, right? A bag of fabric, and he would put on it embroidery, right? Rikma, writing a etrog on it. And every day, regardless of how much he made that day, every day he would put a penny or the smallest coin to this bag, not telling anyone about his little treasure. And hopefully within a year, he's going to have enough money to buy the etrog. And so he did. There were rough times. It was winter. There was little work, a lot of work. Every day before going to bed, open his sack, he put a coin in it, closed it, didn't tell anyone to come. So the year passed by, and before the holiday Sukkot, they started this market of selling this Arbat Aminim, the 4 species of etrog. And our friend, who's not a rich man, a very poor man, known by his friends, and he was walking by and he was looking at the nice ones, right? And the people said, hey, come on, it's not for you. You go to there, in the back table, right? Look. And he was looking and he was thinking, he was counting his money and he saw how much money he has and he thought, if you buy this, that. But anyway, he wasn't telling anyone. And he was waiting on the day of Sukkot, the Erev Sukkot, just before the holiday starts. All the people that were left with etrogim in the marketplace, the vendors, they wanted to get rid of it. So the closer it is to the holiday, the price go down because he wants to at least make something out of it, right? The margin is not that big for them, but at least. So he was looking at the nice etrogim and he waited, right? Obviously their prices were higher than what he had in his little sack, but on the eve of Sukkot, before sundown, right, the price went down. And although the nice etrogim were never category low, because otherwise it would ruin for all those who bought it, but the price you saw the one etrog and he had exactly what it took. Anyway, he bought his etrog and he was delighted like never before. All these years, he always dreamt of an etrog on his own. And this year, finally, and he walks home and his wife said, did you get something from the market? We barely have what to cook. And he said, look at this, my dear wife, look at this. And his wife took the etrog. And she said, what is this? She said, what, are you out of your mind? And he said, no, I saved money every day and I bought an etrog. Finally, I'm going to have to do the mitzvah. So she says, do you mean that all this year that we were barely eating, you took money that could have been for providing for me and for the children and you saved it? You didn't give it to us in order for you to buy an etrog? And as she said that she threw the etrog on the floor and the pitam, the delicate part of it, broke. And basically turned it to a complete useless object. It's nothing. It has no value and no use. And this individual, seeing what his wife did, this was a few minutes before the holiday, said to her and to himself, I guess you are right. I guess a simple Jew like me is not supposed to have an etrog like this. This is not for me. This is not suitable for me. So now he had no etrog, and soon the holiday starts, and he didn't know what to do. So he took one of the few valuables they had in their house, and he went to give it to a pawn shop, right, to get a little bit of money. And with that money, he ran to the Gabai, to the person in charge of the shul, to give him a few coins just to be able to use the communal etrog. All the poor people didn't have. They used to buy one etrog, and they used to line up every day. The regular people, the rich people, they had their etrog, but the other ones, they had to line up just to have 1 minute of their etrog. So he barely had what. So the Baal Shem Tov said to his disciples, since the binding of Isaac, there was not such a trial. So obviously this has, it's a powerful story.
Right.
He didn't get upset. He didn't get angry. Not only did he not get angry, he was trying to appease his wife all the time and say that he asked for forgiveness for saving that money, right? So this was so when we control our anger, we get to positive outcome. Okay, so that's it for today. And I see there's not many questions, or not questions at all. Let's see here. It doesn't display anything. Yeah, nobody had questions. Okay, so let me shut it here.